Asleep in bed. Total loser? Or totally lying? Let's find out!
Hello, I'm Cinemod470. After the mess that was The Acolyte wrapped up, Disneyplus released a new series about lesbian witches. Agatha, House of Harkness. I mean, Coven of Chaos. I mean, Darkhold Diaries. I mean, Lion Witch with Great Wardrobe. Okay, I'm done. It's Agatha all along. But instead of going through the harrowing experience of dissecting each episode and piecing together all the problems into structured paragraphs and putting together an analysis while slowly losing my sanity, serendipity gave me the idea to do things a little different and review another spin-off show that aired around the same time as Agatha, The Penguin. What really surprised me was how similar they were storytelling-wise, yet their quality is oceans apart. So why does The Penguin work, but Agatha doesn't? The Penguin is about how in the aftermath of Carmine Falcone's death and the Riddler flooding Gotham, there's a power vacuum in the criminal underbelly, and both Oswald Cobb and Sophia Falcone want to fill it, while the men in charge don't trust either of them and want to hold on to all the power for themselves. Agatha All Along is about how after Wanda Maximoff died and the Darkhold was destroyed, Agatha managed to break free of the, quite frankly, unethical enchantment she was placed under, but I don't have time to work through all that.
You couldn't move, talk, or do anything.
Agatha realizes she's lost all her magic, and quite frankly, all her intrigue, which causes her enemies to come after her while she's vulnerable. Agatha then puts together a coven to walk the Witch's Road, a mystical trail of magical trials where at the end, you gain great power. The Penguin's overall writing is light years ahead of Agatha, as there's an immediate flaw in Agatha's plot and we're only one episode in. Agatha's been under this enchantment for 3 years, and the residents of Westview all remember what Wanda did to them. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's well known in the magical community that the Scarlet Witch took over a town and stole the Darkhold. So why wouldn't Agatha's enemies take the opportunity to kill her then? You seriously want me to believe that for 3 years nobody knew where she was and took the easy opportunity to kill her? The Penguin, however, takes place a week after the Batman, so the characters are only now reacting to Carmine's death and the city being flooded. If The Penguin took place 2 years later, this power vacuum that the plot is based around would be unrealistic, since no competent crime lord would wait that long to take control. The Penguin's writing is also better because it knows how to handle death and consequences. When Oswald kills Alberto Falcone, it's not part of some clever, calculated scheme. It's him getting angry and impulsive at Alberto's insults, so Oz has to improvise a way to dispose of the body and get an alibi. Alberto's death also has an immense effect on Sophia, cause, you know, they're siblings, and she is constantly hunting for his killer. Agatha's supposed to gather a coven of witches to walk the Witch's Road to get their heart's desires. But her real plan is to force the witches she's gathered to attack her so she can drain their magic, which is revealed later to be a con that she pulled to steal other witches' powers throughout the centuries. However, she told Lila beforehand how her ability works, and she stops the attack. If Agatha has done this before, why would she tell someone how her ability works? And none of the other witches call her out for attempting to murder them. Also, she brings Mrs. Hart to the Witch's Road and she dies after the first trial, and everyone forgets about her after she's buried. This innocent woman was dragged into Agatha's schemes, died, and this doesn't create any lasting tension within the coven. There's barely any emotional impact when Agatha makes fun of her ghost. None of the other witches trust or even like Agatha at this point, so losing one of her team this early on should have more impact. When Alice dies defending Billy and Lila sacrifices herself to save the rest, they barely get mentioned again or have any lasting impact on the group's morale. In fact, all 3 deaths are revealed to be Billy's fault since he created the road, and he barely reacts to it. All we get is one scene of grief, and the next scene is acceptance. In The Penguin, when characters die, there is an impact on the narrative. Character motivations are formed, alliances are made, and long-time relationships can be broken. No matter who the character is, death has a long-lasting effect. Whereas in Agatha, death hits as hard as a Nerf gun. Coincidentally, both shows also have a scene where their protagonists are naked, and even that's handled better in The Penguin. Sophia suspects Oswald of having something to do with her brother going missing, so she captures him and ties him to a chair naked. Sophia does this because she was given similar treatment in Arkham, and Oswald was the reason she went there, but I'll get more into that later. Oswald being naked is not gratuitous, it's meant to show him at his most vulnerable. Whereas Agatha is naked just for the lols. Seriously, there's no reason for her to be naked in the street. I get that she was stripping the layers of the enchantment, but she didn't actually need to strip. And she didn't need to walk outside completely naked. Did Catherine Hahn lose a game of strip poker the night before and had an IOU she needed to pay up? Or did one of the producers want to see her naked on set? Either way, there's a case for her to press charges. Both the pilot episodes also end with their protagonists being at the mercy of their antagonists, only for them to get out of it using their guile. With the Penguin, Oswald sends Victor on a mission to send Alberto's dead body to the Falcone's estate with his ring finger missing, making the family think it was one of their rivals that killed him. But meanwhile, Oswald is captured and tortured and has to convince Sophia not to kill him. It is only by pure luck that he survives, but the method of his success was set up in the scenes prior, whereas Agatha convincing Rio not to kill her makes no sense. Agatha says that killing her is not allowed, yet Rio went to the trouble of blowing up her front door and attacking her. And her winning argument is that Rio wants to kill her when she's at her full power, which again makes no sense, because why would Rio have such an extreme introduction if she wasn't going to follow through on killing Agatha? The Penguin scene has a real sense of tension, but Agatha's scene is just over the top nonsense. When I was in uni working in a film and television course, one of the first things they taught us was that the most important thing to do when developing a project wasn't coming up with a story, it was finding the demographic, because having a good story is meaningless if no one wants to watch it. The Penguin doesn't just continue the story of the Batman, which had a large following. It is also a crime thriller about how Oswald climbs the ranks of the criminal underbelly, which can appeal to those who like both the superhero and crime genres. Agatha all along, on the other hand, doesn't have an audience big enough to warrant a return on the show's budget, especially since it's a spin-off of a spin-off and the franchise it belongs to has alienated the dedicated fanbase over the last 5 years. Also, Agatha is probably one of the most obscure comic book characters of all time, right up there with Madam Web. So there isn't a large fan base from the source material to latch onto. The only demographic that people say that this show is for wine mums, which makes sense since I had to be drunk to watch this show longer than 15 minutes. Oswald's main goal is that he wants to take control of the criminal underworld, but he also wants to be remembered like the gangster from his old neighborhood who was remembered long after he died. As the series continues, we also get to see different sides to Oswald's character through his interactions with Sophia, his mother, and Victor. Whereas Agatha just wants her magic back and has the same personality with each side character, which just makes her appear two-dimensional and, frankly, quite annoying to listen to.
Last one there is a nice person.
Oswald started out as a driver and had to work his way up the ladder, but because he's not physically strong or comes from a rich family, he has to use his wit and intelligence to win arguments and avoid conflict. And all this is clear from the first 15 minutes of the first episode. Since the criminals who are above him don't respect or trust him, he has to work extra hard to get both, whether through coming up with a lucrative deal, throwing someone under the bus, or using blackmail. As spectators, we believe that before each interaction, he plans out how he'll approach them, and when he succeeds, we get to see how cunning he is. Agatha, on the other hand, is just a witch serial killer. It's hinted throughout the series that there may be more to her character because she had a son, and then after he died, she started killing witches. However, it is revealed that even as an infant, her son was an accomplice to her draining other witches' powers before he died. And after, she just goes about killing witches using the Witches' Road myth she and her son created. Agatha is set up to be this long-lived, cunning witch, but most of her plans are her just improvising in the moment. And she mainly just succeeds because the plot demands she does. The scenes when she convinces the other witches to help her are hard to believe because you can't persuade someone with sarcasm. You have to empathize and figure out what they want and prove that you can get it for them. Agatha's method was simply finding a witch, state they don't have much magic, and give them a time and location to attend. Also, Agatha gets forgiven too easily just because she was a mum. Even though she fully intended to kill her new coven, was willing to let Billy die, and only saved him so she could come back as a ghost.
By the way, I did not sacrifice myself for you. I took a calculated risk.
Whereas if Oswald makes one mistake or makes an impulsive decision, he gets an enemy for the rest of the season. The Penguin doesn't paint Oswald as a tragic hero. It just gives him depth and provides hints as to why he became a criminal, and the audience feels compelled to watch his journey. Whereas the audience is told to like and sympathize with Agatha because characters selectively forget all the terrible things she's done. Victor is sort of like Oswald's Robin. We first meet Victor when he's trying to steal Oswald's car rims with his friends, and though he gets caught, he tells his friends to escape. Oswald then uses Vic to help cover up Alberto's murder, and though Oswald could have killed him to cover his tracks, he instead hires Victor as his driver. As the first episode progresses, we understand that Oswald sees a lot of himself in Victor and acts as a mentor. Meanwhile, Victor is traumatized from the loss of his family after the Riddler's flood, and though Victor understands the ramifications and at first struggles with working for a criminal, he wants more than what being good has given him, so his descent into crime is believable. And because Oswald has such a volatile personality, there's real tension when Victor makes a mistake or fails at a task, since it could cost him his life. Billy Maximoff is set up as a mystery for most of the show, which is a real liability when you have so little runtime. Basically, there's a sigil that keeps his identity hidden from witches, and he can't reveal anything about himself. Coincidentally, the spectators can't connect with Billy because they don't know anything about him other than he wants power from the road and has a boyfriend. And the fact that Billy could reveal that he has a boyfriend is a massive flaw in the sigil, since a witch could find out his identity by talking to the boyfriend. Also, the sigil that keeps his identity hidden from the witches is pretty counterproductive, since a witch is going to notice a squiggle appear on his mouth every time he says his name. Billy's main purpose is to act as the novice teenage witch and be the avatar for the audience as they learn more about the witch world. And though Billy does help the Coven in small ways, he doesn't have the same level of agency and character intrigue as Victor until his identity is revealed in episode 6. Whatever intrigue Billy had before then is mainly because he's a mystery box whose successful payoff is akin to Schrodinger's cat, and Disney mystery boxes tend to have a poisoned kitten inside.
You are a Palpatine.
The reveal is Billy's spirit is inhabiting the body of a random teenager who died around the same time Wanda ended her Westview spell. He then lived the next 3 years pretending to be this boy to the parents who thought he just had a form of amnesia, and Billy's on the witch's road to find his lost twin Tommy, whose spirit inhabited the body of a boy who drowned. Like I said, poisoned kitten. And like all of Marvel's current properties, we don't get to dive into everything Billy goes through to give him that needed depth, like waking up in a new body, having new parents, or how the world views Wanda after everything she did to bring him and his brother to life in the first place. The best example to show the difference in quality between the two shows is how they introduce their respective antagonists. While Oswald is pitching the drug idea he stole from Alberto to the bosses, the camera utilizes its depth of field to keep Sophia blurred in the background as she approaches from behind, immediately creating this uneasy tension. Whereas Rio just shows up in Agatha's fantasy and shows up again in witch attire to try and kill her. There is also a clear difference in performance and physical presence. Despite returning from Arkham Asylum and being a feared serial killer called the Hangman, Sophia is unnervingly calm. This gives tension in every scene she's in because no one knows how she'll react in the moment. Whereas Rio is just campy and over the top, so she can't be taken as a serious threat even when she's cutting people with a knife. I'm pretty sure Aubrey Plaza's real life persona is more intimidating. The best way to describe the two in terms of quality is Rio is Jared Leto crazy and Sophia is Heath Ledger crazy. One performance is what someone thinks is crazy, and the other is what someone knows is crazy. Sophia also has more dimensions to her character since she's more than a serial killer. She's also deeply traumatized from her time in Arkham and mourning the loss of her brother, who, despite being an addict, would take the time to see her every week to ensure she had some hope in this cesspool of madness. Whereas, like Agatha, Rio has the same attitude with the other side characters, so we don't get to see different sides to her personality to give her that same level of depth. Both antagonists also have a reveal about their character later in the series. This is entering spoiler territory, so I would recommend skipping to the time slot on screen, or just go watch The Penguin, it's very good. Sophia is introduced as recently returning from Arkham and being labeled a serial killer, and as the series progresses, the spectator's focus is drawn on how she reacts to being stared at and called the Hangman. Episode 4 reveals that it was Sophia's father Carmine who strangled those women and made it look like they hanged themselves, and Sophia realizes that he did the same thing to her mother when she was a child. Sophia goes to a reporter to find out more information, but refuses to help her in the investigation by spying on her father. Oswald tells Carmine about the meeting to get a promotion, and Carmine kills the reporter and frames Sophia for all the murders. She is sent to Arkham for 6 months until her trial date, and during this time, Sophia is tortured with electrical therapy and savagely beaten by one of the inmates. When her court date comes, the judge refuses to give trial, and Sophia is stuck in Arkham indefinitely. With her spirit finally broken, Sophia kills one of the inmates that had been taunting her since she arrived. This reveal gives Sophia's character so many layers because she was truly a decent person and not the monster the city and the spectators assumed her to be, but was turned into one by her father and in small part Oswald. And her origin ties into what we know about Carmine from the Batman film.
Am I crazy? Is it all in my head? Tell me. Tell me that I'm too emotional and that I have an overactive imagination and that I shouldn't take things so personally.
Rio is revealed to be death itself, which doesn't have much impact since there wasn't really much warranting the spectator's interest in her character, and she doesn't have much screen time to build any. Rio is a glass onion. She has the illusion of layers, but her core is perfectly visible, especially since there have been other more interesting interpretations of death with much more intrigue. Take Death from the Sandman. We see her as this kind, down-to-earth woman, since unlike her endless siblings, she spends the most amount of time with humans and knows how they view her. So when their time comes, she's not this horrifying reaper, but a kind face who must send them on their final journey. Which is a real shame, because imagine if Rio stayed with the group the entire time as they died one by one. Not simply snatching their souls, but helping them along as she knows their time is coming and nothing can stop it. It would certainly improve her intimidation factor, as this idea of inevitability against this coven of witches trying to change their fate, but the show portrays death like a diva.
I am the natural order of all things, baby. And you love me.
The Penguin succeeds because it knows how to write layered protagonists, antagonists, and side characters. It understands how to capture an audience, and it creates a sense of tension by putting emphasis on actions and consequences. Agatha all along falls flat because it doesn't know how to capture the largest possible audience and mainly banks on whatever remains of the MCU's fan base. The characters are also completely one note, have little chemistry or differing attitudes with each other, and have their intrigue banked on mystery boxes. And that is why The Penguin works and Agatha all along doesn't.